Welcome to Hip Talk, the podcast where we talk about all the new and exciting innovations coming to the Hedera network. Today's a really exciting conversation. It's going to be our first deep dive, hopefully the first of many, on really important HIPs and innovations coming to Hedera. And today, in particular, we're going to be focusing on frictionless airdrops, otherwise known as HIP-904. And just to kind of set up this conversation, you'll probably see us use both terms. You probably sometimes hear us call it HIP-904. You probably hear us sometimes call it frictionless airdrop. We do mean the same thing. So just by way of introductions, my name is Keith Cole. I'm a director of product management at Hashgraph. And joining me today is Ty Smith, who's a senior product manager at Hashgraph, and Nana Essilfie-Conduah, who is a senior engineering manager at Hashgraph. Welcome both. So HIP-904, if any of you have been watching the HIP Talks, has been something that's been happening over quite a few different releases. I think since release 52 all the way up to release 54, we've been iteratively releasing new features. So I think we'd like to go back in time and just kind of go through the history of this HIP, the need for it, and then of course how we delivered it and what that looks like for end users and for the broader Hedera ecosystem. So maybe we can start with Ty. Maybe you can give a quick overview of like a high level of the overall token ecosystem, and then more specifically the token ecosystem within Hedera, and why we felt the need for HIP 904 to address either specific issues within Hedera or broader issues that we think really solves real life world problems in the token environment.
Yeah. So Hedera is a pretty unique network where we both are EVM compatible, and so ERC tokens exist and are used on the network, and we have a native service called the Hedera Token Service, or HTS. With ERCs, things like frictionless airdrop, the concept already exists, where without the receiving wallet taking any action, you're able to send ERC20s or 721s, fungible tokens, USDC, whatever the contents are. But tokens aren't restricted by what wallet they can go into, and it's quite easy to just send ERCs around. The Hedera token service has a different functionality built in called association. And what that does with a wallet that's default created, it will have association turned on. And that says the wallet cannot receive a token on the Hedera token service without first saying, I'm okay receiving that in a token association request to the network. This has several implications. There's different functionalities and maybe regulatory compliance reasons why you would not want assets to be sent to a particular wallet without you agreeing to have it. But it also introduces challenges. So there's some benefits, and then the challenge is if you were a project and you need to airdrop a token to 10,000 wallets, you'd have to have an intimate conversation with each of those wallets to say, hey, please associate this token before I can do the airdrop. And it's just a much more cumbersome experience when just through production use cases, we've seen the demand for this ability to let people know programmatically on the network, hey, I'm trying to send you this, without having to have some sort of mechanism of already talking to that person in real life or through chat or something. And so frictionless airdrops enables people using the Hedera token service to do that and to send these pending requests of an airdrop to these accounts that are on the Hedera network and allow them to then accept asynchronously without having that before token association of the wallet. Accept that asset and it will come into the wallet. So it's a much nicer experience for the developer because they can just execute all the calls of who they want to airdrop to. And it's much nicer for the receiver because people might be losing out on assets because they didn't know to associate a token that they earned. In this way, that they can just check their pending, accept it, and now they have this nice experience with the added guardrails of token association still intact on the token service.
Great. And just so we're crystal clear, as you mentioned before, Hedera has two types of tokens: ERC tokens, and then the HTS tokens. So HIP 904, correct me if I'm wrong, only applies to the HTS tokens.
Correct. Yep.
Great. So turning it over to Nana. So obviously, there was some interest in the community and around creating this kind of frictionless airdrop functionality. And I'm guessing that at some point you got involved. When you started thinking about frictionless airdrops, what were the major design considerations that you had to think about as the HIP went through its development process?
Yeah, as with most HIPs, it's usually pretty complex, but it really comes down to the users and enabling them. And in this case, I would say we had, I want to say like three personas that we really looked at. I would say the network, the issuers of the airdrop that want to send these tokens, and the potential recipients. So from the network side, with every single feature, one of our prime goals is always to make sure that the current functionality of the network, as well as its security, are maintained and, if even possible, improved. So this means, at the protocol level, when we're making certain changes to state or adding new transaction types, that we really consider what does this function look like, or what does this functionality look like for the network when, say, transactions are going in at 10,000 transactions per second. Can the network handle it? Will it be able to scale up? What does it look like a year or two from now? And so those are big considerations that we make, right? The second persona, as I was mentioning, was the issuers, right? This whole feature came from some friction from a certain type of user, the user that wants to send these native tokens to somebody else, and they have these expectations coming from other EVM networks, and so their expectations of how flows should work, where it should be seamless, is something that we had in mind. Understanding, of course, that from the native persona or the native perspective, we don't have that. How close can we get to that frictionless experience as possible? And then I'd say the final one would be the users or the potential recipients themselves. As Ty mentioned, one of the sort of I'd say foundational items of Hedera is account autonomy, right? The fact that you as a user have control over what is associated or in your balance, held in your balance, right? You have that choice. And so association was there for that. So if we add this pathway to adopt frictionless airdrops, we don't want to do that at the expense of user autonomy. So how do we combine this new functionality while still giving potential recipients the right and the privilege to be able to sort of maintain and organize their account the way they see fit? So those are sort of the design considerations that came in for this HIP.
That's great. Yeah, I mean, I think that's great background. So now I'd like to dive into the meat and potatoes of the HIP, because I think actually as we go through the HIP and we talk through the different features, it also provides kind of explanation for how it works and some of the further motivations for how it was developed. So let me just start with I think probably one of the highest level new features, which is unlimited automatic token associations. So Ty, maybe we can start with a pre and post version of this. What did the Hedera ecosystem look like before we had unlimited automatic token associations, and then what does it look like after, and what's that delta?
Yeah, that's a really good topic because I think the HIP is pretty long, so this is something that might have gotten hidden, but to me, I think it's a really big improvement in user experience, especially as the recipient of possible airdrops or just tokens in general. Before HIP-904, we have associations, right? So you have to manually put in the token ID you want to receive before someone can send it to you, and then you can receive it. And then we had the concept of associated slots, where the owner of the wallet or the account could pay to say, I'm going to accept 5 associations of any token. And then anyone on the network could send a token to them, and it would fill one of those slots. And then, so if I had 5, someone sending one, I'd have 4. And the user and the account that was receiving it was the person paying to have this ability to not have to associate. With HIP-904, there's a couple changes to that. The first one is you have an ability to have infinite auto associations, which was not a concept before HIP-904. So even though the token service has this association for compliance and protective sort of mechanism, if you do not want it, you now have a chance to just say, I accept all tokens no matter what, sort of exactly like an Ethereum wallet or on EVM ERCs. You kind of have that parity. The second biggest change is that no longer do you pay, or the account that's receiving no longer pays for those associations, but rather the person sending it. And so for someone to send you a token is now at no cost for the recipient account, which I think just improves a lot of onboarding mechanisms and user experience in general of what the expectations are from network to network. And then when I guess the last, there's different states of accounts. And so an account that is created by, say, Hashpack or Blade is typically going to be one that has associations turned on by default. Though you can use MetaMask, and if you were to create a Hedera account through MetaMask, auto association is going to be default turned on. And that's because MetaMask doesn't really have this concept of association, and the user experience is easier there. So we've introduced this new feature of having unlimited, and when you create new accounts in the future, depending on how you create the account, its default settings will be a little bit different, just in the mechanism of which that account was put onto the network.
Yeah, thank you for that. I guess when I think about it, I think we're heading into a world where basically like an account can have fall into three different buckets. It can have unlimited token associations, it could have a finite set of token associations, or it could have zero token associations. Would that be correct?
That is correct, but I believe that the second one is grandfathered in, and I don't going forward, I don't think prepaying for token associations is a mechanism that's still in place. So if you've done it in the past, that is how it works. But going forward, it's much more, do you want unlimited associations and people send it to you, or do you want it to be manual where you put in the token ID of everything you're going to accept? So that middle one is kind of getting deprecated and will slowly just kind of fade out.
Okay. So I think you already kind of mentioned this, but let's go further. So the second kind of major feature we have is that the sender can now pay for automatic association fees. Again, could you maybe, and I think you touched on this a little bit in your last comments, but could you again touch on what did it look like before HIP-904 and then after HIP-904 for this particular feature?
Right, yeah. So if I was an account, you have a token, Keith token. It's pretty great. I would like it. So I'm going to take the Keith token ID and I'm going to pay, I believe it's pegged to USD 5 cents for an association. And now my account can receive Keith token. That's historically, that's still how it works, and that's historically how it has worked. If I said, okay, I'm okay getting 3 new tokens, I don't really care what they are, but if someone were to send me one or an airdrop that I've entered and I'm not sure when they're going to send it out, I'm not sure what the token ID is yet because they didn't create it, I'm going to prepay 15 cents, and I'm going to have 3 slots that anyone on the network can send me any token. And then that, say the Keith token does an airdrop, now I get my Keith token, I'm happy as a clam, that's great, I have 2 slots left over. That was the previous method. The new method going forward would be if I have unlimited associations turned on and Keith token does an airdrop, Keith is going to pay 5 cents to send that and pay for the association of my account. And so the onus of payment is moved from the recipient to the sender. And I think just from a perception of user experience, it eases a lot of use for people coming over from other networks to have more of a seamless experience that they would expect on any other network, where they don't have to pay for an association or have any money in the wallet to receive a token. And with this change, we kind of got a lot closer to that parity of other networks.
And of course, I would highly recommend everyone to get the Keith token. So that's music to my ears. So the final feature that I'd like to talk about is the pending token transfers functionality. And again, Nana, maybe we can talk about it in what does pending mean, and then what did this look like, before HIP-904 and after HIP-904?
Yeah. So the pre 904 part of that is easy. Pending didn't exist. There was no concept of a pending transfer. It either went through or it didn't. Post 904, what this really means is that the network captures your intent to do the transfer. So it's pending because the transfer actually hasn't gone through. And I want to make this clear: the token that is being attempted to airdrop has not left the original owner's balance. So Keith, if you are trying to airdrop to Ty and it went into a pending status, that token is still within your balance. You still own it. You still have rights over it. but the network has captured your intent to transfer that to Ty. And it stays in this state until one of you takes action. Either you cancel or Ty claims it.
So that's kind of some of the high level functionality. Now let's kind of dive into the new transactions that have been enabled to enable a frictionless airdrop. So Nana, maybe we can start with, I think, probably one of the core new transactions, which is the token airdrop transaction. Can you describe a little bit about what this is and what it does?
Yeah. So essentially, an airdrop is the transfer of a token to an account that may or may not have associated with it already, right? So in our case, in other, or actually, let me say, in other chains, this isn't a consideration like Ty mentioned. But in our case, for account autonomy, as I mentioned, this is a case that you could fall into. So before HIP-904, what would happen is if you decided to do a crypto transfer of Keith token, for example, and Ty did not have the association on his account, you would actually hit an error. And for a native Hedera developer, that's understandable. You've read the documentation, you really understand what the API looks like. But if you're coming over from EVM land or smart contract land, that's a jarring experience for you. You've never transferred and hit an error before, because really it's just ledgering in a smart contract. And so post 904, instead of using the initial crypto transfer transaction type, this new transaction type called token airdrop is there with the same functionality of crypto transfer, but that consideration for if an association does not exist. So post 904, if you were to do a token airdrop to somebody that was associated with key token, it would work just like a crypto transfer. So there's nothing different there. So in that case, it's interchangeable between a crypto transfer. If the person had available slots, like if it was unlimited, or if they had 2 more slots, as Ty had mentioned, the token or the user would be automatically associated with the token, just like it would be in a crypto transfer, and that transfer will actually happen and go across. So in these 2 scenarios, everything works kind of the same, even though it's a different transaction. Where the magic really happens is in that third case, where you do not have automatic associations on your account, or you have no slots available. If somebody is to use the token airdrop to send you key token, instead of them experiencing an error, it goes through successfully, and the network pretty much picks up your intent to do that transfer. So this is really powerful for dApp developers and others who assume this success and wanting to be able to continue there. So that's that new transfer or that transaction to be able to do the actual airdrop transfer.
So the next transaction I want to talk about is token claim airdrop. Ty, what is this transaction?
Yeah, it was pretty simple concept. Keith token has been sent to me through a token airdrop, and I did not have it associated. So now it's in pending state, and then I would use the token claim airdrop function to claim that token. And then it would automatically associate in that claim transfer, and then I'd get the balance. So just like Nana said, before I interact with that, it's still in your your account, your wallet. You have ownership of it. The second I do the claim transfer, it will be associated with my account. It will come into my account, and now I have the sole discretion over that balance.
Great. And then I guess, Nana, kind of the inverse of that is the other new transaction, which is token cancel airdrop. Could you just maybe, what is that, and who would use that?
Yeah. So this is kind of like going back to that persona of the airdropper that is, maybe they're running some form of a campaign. They have lots of users on the network. The reality is, because you maintain control over their tokens, you could change your mind. I could want to airdrop to Ty today, and then I find out that maybe Ty isn't interested in it, and I want to, airdrop it to you, Keith, instead. Or maybe I just made a mistake. So with this intent, because the transfer actually hasn't happened, during that time that it's pending, I, as the initial airdropper, can go in and cancel my intent and tell the network that I no longer want this to be in pending state. I no longer want this to actually go to the person I said. Cancel that initiative that I brought up. So that's essentially the goal there.
Okay. And probably on the same thing, then what is token reject?
Yeah. So token reject is a concept that is in the HIP, but I also want to clarify here that it does not connect to airdropping per se. So token reject actually gives any user, regardless of how they obtain a token in their balance, the opportunity to return this token to the treasury without paying custom fees. So let me expand on that last part. Another, I'd say great functionality that the Hedera network offers is this native representation of custom fees, that when you send a token, somebody can collect either, sort of HBAR, or even in that native token, some value that says that, you're transferring this. Maybe I'm the art maker. I want to get some royalty from this, something of that sort. And so custom fees allows you to sort of dictate what that value should be. The side effect of this is that if you had a token in your balance that, maybe you had auto association on, or you had a few slots open, and somebody sent it to you without your knowledge, you may not want that token for many different reasons, which are totally up to you. Therefore, if you're trying to get rid of that token, it's unfair for you as a user to have to pay custom fees if they're there. And this functionality didn't exist before. And so with this token reject transaction, the network is giving people the ability to return such tokens to the treasury and not be withholden to the custom fees that come along with it.
And there's an interesting characteristic to token reject, and that's that you can reject a token, but not if that token is frozen or paused. Maybe Ty, can you just explain a little bit about why that consideration was put in place?
Yeah, I think what we've seen in production and of adoption of the Hedera token service really lends a lot of people who are risk adverse and enjoy the protocol layer executing certain things, just as Nana was describing custom fees. That's an optional function on smart contracts. If that's something imperative for your use case, you can use the token service, and that's going to be executed every time that is transmitted from account to account. And so things like pause and freeze have implications on compliance and regulatory reasons on why you would need to know, from soulbound tokens to other rationale, that this token is not going to move in business logic and production. It requires that knowledge that this cannot move. So if the token is frozen or paused into an account, the token reject will not supersede that frozen or that pause. And then the other rationale would be, you're not in danger of being the risk of a custom fee taking money from you from removing that token is zero, because it's impossible for you to move that token. It's paused or frozen. So just the exposure layer that you have there is lessened as well with a frozen or paused token.
I mean, obviously, HIP-904, Frictionless Airdrops, introduces a lot of new functionality, and it takes, the ecosystem will have to start adopting that functionality. So maybe we can start with, I guess, Ty, in a perfect world, what do you see the wallet experience looking like, or the user experience with token airdrop functionality? How do you see that working, and then what's our progress look like on that?
Yeah, I think having the ability to see your pending airdrops, having the ability to not look at ones that are pending anymore, and being able to easily accept pending, just the basic mechanics that you would hope to see when you're getting airdrops, or easy view for that. And I think there's some interesting dynamics, I guess I won't get into right now, but there's some cool things that can be executed and use cases that weren't possible before this hit. But from a wallet standpoint, ability to see your pending, ability to hide the ones you don't want to see, and the ability to accept. And I guess the second part of your question was adoption. Hashgraph is in communication with our wallet ecosystem, working with them to get these new functionality built in and the new user experience built in. So we're hoping for a pretty smooth rollout in the next couple of months to get this feature a lot closer to users and a lot easier for people to start using in production with low development overhead.
And I guess the other side of this coin would be the issuers of tokens, or often developers. So I know we have an amazing new blog up on Hedera.com. We have some great tutorials up on docs.hedera.com to support our developer community. Any other callouts either of you would make to the developer community as they're looking to interface and leverage this functionality?
Yeah, I would say for the developer community, any applications that are in the DeFi scenarios, I would say, and as Ty mentioned, if you're a wallet maker, um, if there's ever been a case of uncertainty around how does an association play with this token, this is the hip for you, right? You can now replace your use of crypto transfer with token airdrop, and you don't have to worry about that. You should, of course, I'd say, partner with the right wallets and explorers to make sure that the dependent states are visible to your users. But this is something that you're now able to do. You can also do this directly within smart contracts as well. So this is you can either do it through the SDK or you can do it within smart contracts, and both these scenarios are available to you. And then I'd also say, like, if you're just trying to bring an ERC flow type mentality to HTS tokens, this is also there for you. As Ty and others had mentioned before, the concept of association isn't there. You sort of just transfer it. And so now, tied in with the ability to treat HTS tokens as either ERC20s or 721s, you can now do those transfers in the same way that you would expect for a smart contract token.
So you both have had a long journey with HIP-904. I'm sure we're all really super excited that it's across the finish line now. As you went through your journey with HIP-904, what were the applications or use cases for HIP-904 that got you most excited? So maybe I could start with you, Ty. What when you think about HIP-904, what is like you think, wow, this would be amazing for this community?
Yeah, I think Nana called out the most straightforward use cases. Comfortability of ecosystem, trying to match parity with other ERC um, mechanisms, and just flows that make sense for the user and for the developer. My mind goes to what does this unlock in unique different ways, and there's some parameters of how this airdrop functionality works that can lend some new to me can lend to some new cool interesting use cases and exploration by the developer community on Hedera. So one of those would be if I have, say, 100 Keith token, because we're just keep with that, and I want to send that to, and I do a pending airdrop to, let's just say, 1,000 people, and I know all of them don't have this associated because I didn't share the token ID. All 1,000 of those people could get notifications in their wallet that they have this pending airdrop, but only the first 100 that would accept it would get the airdrop. And so there's an interesting paradigm of both these pending airdrops will exist until you cancel them, and you can do different layers of say, like, rarity, where the first 100, if you're fast enough and you saw it and you claim them, then you'll get that first 100, and then you can mint another 100 of the token. Let's say these are NFTs instead of fungible tokens, and then you can do the same thing where you airdrop the second round to the 900 that didn't get it, and the first 100 of that 900. Then you have this tiered approach of engagement and interaction with your community through airdrop, and sort of requiring high attention of waiting for this random airdrop to come out, and then that giving you some hierarchy inside of a use case. I think that yeah, the being able to replenish the balance and the ability for doing more pending airdrops than currently exist in the wallet is a thing that doesn't really exist. Or if it does, there's a much more Web 2 components that need to facilitate that. And this is all on the protocol level. And I think we just have a really vibrant, interesting community of developers that once that gets out, I'm pretty excited to see what they do with it.
Great. And Nana, what gets you excited?
Example, the fact that on our network that can be done in seconds, right, in comparison to other chains. So if you were doing this airdrop on other chains, depending on how fast finality is, you were doing this maybe one at a time, or looking for that finality and waiting there. But the numbers that Ty just mentioned, these are happening within seconds because of the speed that the network offers, right? And this is seconds going against the Hedera API, but also going through the smart contract service as well.
All right. Well, I want to thank you both for your time today to talk about this really exciting new innovation on Hedera. Any concluding remarks? Any takeaways?
No, this has been great. I would just say, we love sort of user and community feedback. So keep watching out for more HIPs. Please comment on them. We read them. We take them into consideration, and we're doing this to make users and the network better. So we're open ears to that.
Great discussion. I agree with Nana. Just if you want something, say it, and say it loudly. Put it on comments. Put it in GitHub, and build the network together.
Well, that's a great summary. So thank you everyone for joining us today on HIP Talk. I hope this has been useful. We'll be posting links to the HIP itself, and also the tutorials I mentioned, the docs, to get more information about frictionless airdrops. As always, please reach out to us on Discord or any of our social media channels with questions or comments, or GitHub. We're all ears. And thank you very much. Hope everyone has a great day.